Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The M1 Garand is really not a weapon that we've talked about in Warzone really at all ever since the Vanguard integration, but it has seen several updates over the course of time. Most recently with the main Season 5 update, they ended up changing the ammo supply here from sniper ammo, which obviously is very limited, you can only carry a certain amount, over to rifle ammo, which is a lot more plentiful. Plus, they buffed it in several other ways as well, giving it better velocity, increasing the magazine capacity. All around, it got some significant buffs. So today I wanted to break down whether or not the M1 Garand is meta. And that of course starts with the core few attachments of the M1 Garand, and just like on every other weapon, that is the muzzle, the barrel, and the magazine, especially for Vanguard weapons. So that being said, we are here on True Game Data, and as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different M1 Garands to look at here, with relatively similar setups with a few changes here and there. So basically what we're seeing here are a combination of a few different attachments: the Mercury silencer, the Iron Sides barrel, and the 30-06 40-round drums, or the MX silencer, the Cooper 25 custom barrel, the 30-06 40-round drums. And there's also a couple of builds with the Iron Side barrel exclusively, because that is the barrel that offers the best range and whatnot, with the Sakura 40-round drums to see if there's any difference in that magazine. But really, it's just a mix and match primarily of the Iron Side and the custom barrel, and then the MX and the Mercury silencer to see what exactly is going on here. And when we look at our graph, we get some pretty interesting information. Right away, you can essentially rule out two different builds here, and that is our pink line and that is our light blue line, which are those Sakura 40-round drums. Now, these are the easier ones to shoot by a decent margin because they have the faster fire rate, better control, and better movement rounds, essentially, like what you'd see on several other builds. They could, in theory, be relatively easy to use. But that said, despite the 30-06 rounds here having essentially more recoil, more kick, this is a semi-auto weapon, and that's something to take very important note of because it completely changes if this is a meta weapon for you or not. But because it's semi-auto, you're controlling how fast this recoil is going to go from where it starts to where it ends, right? You could tap a little bit slower in between to reset that recoil. You can go about it several different ways. You could spam it if you wanted to and have a more severe recoil pattern, but that's something very important. So recoil here, not as big of a factor considering it is more user dependent, but clearly our damage drop off here at 48 meters versus somewhere in the 60s, just not worth. So we can go ahead and get rid of the Sakura 40-round drum options completely, leaving us with this graph between these four choices. Obviously, two of these have the Mercury silencer, and one of those Mercury silencers is with the Iron Side, one is with the Cooper 25, the other has the MX, and one is with the Cooper 25, one with the Iron Sides. And we get some pretty interesting information here. So in theory, our blue line here, which is the Iron Side, the MX silencer, and the 30-06 40, has the best TTK through 68 meters, basically 69. Nice. And then after that damage drop off, it is right there even with our orange line, which is the Mercury silencer with the Iron Sides barrel. You can see though our Cooper custom, which is our green and our pink line here, the pink one has that longer damage range, 4 meters from 68 to 64, or 5 meters really, and that's just the difference of the MX silencer versus the Mercury here. And admittedly, MX here I don't feel like is super necessary. If we were to go ahead and look at the recoil patterns again, we're gonna hide our initial ones here, which were the they were the dark blue and the pink ones. So if we go ahead, we hide our dark blue, we hide our pink. These are our main four builds, and you can see our orange line here and our blue line here, basically the same pattern, and then green and our purple or pink, basically the same recoil pattern, which looks like a lot, but again, this pattern is not necessarily going to be the exact same for you. It depends on how fast you're shooting. But that control there with the MX versus no MX, not really seeing much of a difference in, you know, green versus pink here, which is quite literally the difference of Mercury and MX. So to me, that MX silencer just is not offering you enough to make a huge difference here. So I'd say we also chalk the MX silencer builds here, which are going to be our pink and our teal lines. So that leaves us with our orange and our green. One of these obviously has the Cooper Custom 25, which is our green line. The other is the Iron Sides. Now, the Cooper Custom 25 barrel is the more aggressive one here, snappier ADS. The Iron Sides is the best range, in theory, the best control, right? But really the only difference here, we're looking at 0.879 with the Cooper Custom versus 0.853 with the Iron Sides. And to me, that difference, again, not necessarily enough to make me want to use the slower, heavier, bulkier Iron Side barrel when Cooper Custom 25 seems like it's getting the job done just fine. So to me, these core three are the way to go. But of course, we can't just look at the individual gun. We have to compare this to other builds. So now we've got several other meta weapons in here. Obviously, there's 2 builds here that I've got crossed out. We don't need to worry about those because we've just now discovered that these builds are not worth it. We're focused on our pink line here. Our light pink is going to be our Mercury Cooper 25 30-640. We're going against the Automaton, the Cooper, the Grau, the UGM, other obviously top choices for long range and super popular builds as well. Also, just a reminder as we are going through this, if you are new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, tips. You're going to find it all right here. And also, if you're not subbed to Tony, he's the one who provides all this information on true game data. The man is a beast when it comes to Warzone stats. Be sure to check him out as well as alongside the site. But let's look at this TTK chart now. And you can see our pink line here might be a little bit higher up than you might have thought, because a lot of players have been talking about the M1 Garand, how, oh, it's like the second coming of the DMR, right? This thing is crazy good. But when you compare this, for what it's worth, it has a very impressive initial damage range. 64 meters is very, very good, and one of the better ones in the game here, right? But you can see, even through that 64 meters, the only time it is the most competitive is from about 47 meters here to 64. So you're looking at about a 20-meter range where it truly is very competitive. Outside of that, though, it drops off pretty severely, ends up having the worst TTK out of these options past 64 meters. And through those first 40 meters, it's basically even with the Automaton, kind of close to the Cooper there for a bit, but obviously the Automaton and the Cooper are going to be easier to shoot because they're full auto and have very low recoils. So when you look at this, I don't necessarily say, oh, the M1 Garand is a clear and obvious choice for a great TTK top tier meta weapon, right? It is good, but it also is harder to use. And usually weapons that have a harder ease of use, things that are semi-auto or have a ton of recoil, think the MG82 for instance, they have a ridiculously good payoff. The Type 100 as well is a good example, where it has a lot of really annoying recoil and slow movement speed for a sub, but its TTK is so much better than everything else. We're not necessarily getting that here. So in the end, when it comes down to whether or not the M1 Garand is a true meta weapon, I feel like that's an over-exaggeration. This thing is certainly competitive, and now after all these buffs, it is better than it's ever been. However, we've got several options here that have faster TTKs, and keep in mind, this video is a little bit pre-recorded. We could see nerfs to the UGM that hurt its TTK, and I still don't think that even with a severe damage drop-off, it'd be worse than the M1 Garand at range here, right? So, you know, these are subject to change over time, but nothing here stands out to me that says this is a meta weapon. Its TTK, while competitive, is far from being the best, and with that semi-auto, you know, property, it's harder to use. So very competitive, great for Rebirth and Fortune's Keep, decent for Caldera, but not meta. That said, I do want to provide you guys with a setup if you want to go ahead and try this out for yourself. Obviously, it is very player specific as to whether or not this is going to be very good and feel good, or if it's going to feel very mediocre. But as we saw in the graph, we're going for Mercury Silencer, the 25-inch custom for better control, better velo, which is not as heavy and bulky as Ironsides is, so we got that. We also are going to have the 30-640 round mags. Now, what else do we want to be running here? Personally, I feel like this is a mid-range weapon when it comes down to it. So 2.5 times is a great choice here. If you wanted to, you could also go for the Slate 2.5 times, which for whatever reason is locked, even though I have this at level 70. Is there a second one? Guess we're not using Slate 2.5 times on this. 2.5 times it is. Shout out bugs and glitches that are still here in Warzone this much later. For our stock here, you got a couple of different options. S3TC is one of these ones that is more recoil based, better stability, which is also very convenient, but recoil recovery is another big part of that. Padded though, better control during sustained fire is personally one that I really enjoy using, just because while you are continuously shooting this, that's going to count for sustained fire and it'll work well. For our underbarrel here, I go for Carver. You saw the pattern there was largely vertical, so that'll help out with that. We got lengthened on here as well, per usual. For our rear grip, stippled's not a bad choice, but in this case, because we do have initial firing control here and padded is sustained, we can't mix those. So unfortunately, there's no real point in using stippled here. Instead, I'd go for something like either hatched or polymer. Polymer obviously is only going to work during sustained fire, whereas hatched will work just in general control and with a little bit of vertical, a little bit of horizontal help there. For perk 1, honestly, hard scope going to be your way to go, I'd say. Better control, again, just going to make it a little bit easier to shoot. with 40 rounds. Sleight of hand, not the most necessary, but it's definitely not a bad option for what it's worth. Then perk 2, you could either go for fully loaded or you could go for on hand if you want that faster ADS. You're not necessarily going to burn through ammo here because this is rifle ammo now, so fully loaded is not the most essential thing in the world. This would be my current go-to setup though. Bit of a tricky weapon to master, decent though if you can get down its basic properties, but definitely not a top tier meta weapon as I've seen some people saying over the past couple of weeks. Very good, but not the greatest. That being said, that's gonna wrap things up for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that sub button, turn on those post notifications, because every day I got you covered with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.